Welcome back to HPDG. My name is Zane, and what you're looking at is the cab off of the donor truck for the Project Atlas build. I've got quite a few videos on this project as of yet. This is the last video where we tear this truck down completely before we start building it up. So I've got this cab that I need to put in storage. I've got an engine and transmission that I need to remove from this chassis that's sitting on my equipment trailer. Not only that, some of you might remember this old truck. It just wandered onto the property because I can't stop buying stuff. So I've got a cab to deal with, an engine and transmission to remove, and then we got to get this old Mack out of the way. So let's get to it. I'm in central Missouri, so the weather around here can change at the snap of a fingers. The last time you seen me in the last video, it was raining non-stop for about a month straight. Now it's sunny, 95 degrees with little to no breeze. So this is going to be a little bit difficult dealing with this in the hot weather, but still got to get done, I guess. I removed the piece of plastic that was over the transmission already off camera. Time to get the hood out of the way, and then we'll work on removing those levers off the side of the transmission back there. Try not to damage anything, of course. I took the day off of work and I'm by myself, so I got to do the best I can do with no help. Not only did I have the hood covering this engine, I also put a rag with a trash bag over the top of it, all weighted down by this aluminum wheel, just to be extra secure that no water got down in here. Looks like on the driver's side of the engine, I've got the reverse light switch. Need to remove that. I can take this bracket out of the way also that goes down to the PTO. There's quite a few power steering lines and vacuum hoses. These have been cut. They ran back to the air tank at the back of this truck, so those can just get pulled out of the way. I think the only spot I'm really going to have a problem with is the power steering pump on this side. But those can all be dealt with. Let's go to the passenger side. On the passenger side, I've got the emergency brake handle. I've got the levers for the 2- and 4-wheel drive and the high and low for the transfer case. They're mounted to the side of the transmission on this plate, which technically I could leave all that stuff on there and pull the engine and transmission out, but since the cab is out of the way, I'll just get this stuff removed, and it's one less thing to worry about when I'm trying to hook a chain on here and remove this engine and transmission from the chassis. Up here towards the front, I think I have a starter wire down there, and that's pretty much it, I guess, for the passenger side. Doesn't look too bad at all over here. Alright, so there's that entire bracket set up for the emergency brake handle and for the high and low shifter for the 4-wheel drive. I'll be sure to put these bolts back in here. On the driver's side, there's this bracket for the PTO. Here we got the connector for the reverse lights, and it doesn't really look like it's holding on here very strong. Doesn't appear to be broken. Now it's time for me to get in here and sort out these vacuum lines and cut these brake lines also out of the way. I think all of this stuff is just kind of sitting here. It was removed from the firewall of the truck, so I shouldn't have too much of a hassle to get it out of the way. Yeah, just like that one's cut. A lot of these brake lines can either just get pushed out of the way or cut. The clutch linkage on this truck has this spring, so that'll be the next thing I take off of here. And I'm hoping that this has just enough pull. I was going to say that I can take this rod out of the clutch fork arm, but it doesn't have enough, so I'm gonna have to get down here and take this cotter pin out all the way up here, and this whole rod will come out of the holder. Alright, now that cotter pin's out of there, this rod is removed. Now I think I need to get in here and remove these bolts from this pivot, and I should be fine. I took this push rod out of the equation. This goes from the other side of this bracket down to the throwout bearing. So that's out of the way. I don't have to worry about it. I unbolted the other side of this bracket from the bell housing, but it's in here to where I have to either take this side apart or take that side apart. And since there's these two bolts down here that holds this whole linkage mechanism to the frame, I'm just going to take these out of here, and this whole bracket should slide off of here. So there we got the frame bracket, and then the clutch rod bracket pops out of here. Forgot to mention in the last video, the rod that comes through the floor that comes from the clutch pedal. You see how egg-shaped that hole is. Not to mention the fact somebody's welded this before. Got a beautiful little junkyard bunny over there right now, just kind of watching the show that's going on. Anyways, enough with the distractions. The clutch linkage is completely removed and out of the way, so that's one less thing to worry about. Now it's time to jump onto these power steering lines, and honestly that's the thing I'm dreading the most because this system still has fluid in it. But up here you have your engine driven power steering pump that runs off of a belt. The fluid runs from the reservoir through this line to the power steering box. And then from the power steering box, you've got the line that runs down here for the return into the reservoir. But all of these steel lines run from the steering box, down the driver's side frame rail, underneath the radiator cross member, all the way up the passenger side frame rail, right to there. And that line is supposed to hook to the power steering assist ram for this truck since it's equipped four-wheel drive. But anyways, I don't have to worry about any of these steel lines for right now. I do, however, have to get rid of the supply line and the return line. Both of these appear to be in decent shape, but down here on the ends of the fittings, there are some dry cracks. So instead of removing this, I'm going to cut it in the middle. That way I can put a bolt on this side, a bolt on that side, and a hose clamp, so none of the fluid runs out all over the deck of the trailer. I'll do the same here on the supply line, or the return line, I'm sorry. Now I could just simply remove this from the steering box itself, but down here I don't think I'm going to have anything that's going to thread in here to keep the fluid from running out of it, and I don't want to mess the threads up in there by trying to run a bolt in there, so we're going to sacrifice this line to make it a little bit easier. Luckily nothing came out of these lines, even though that pump is full. I guess I made the rookie mistake in not recording whenever I cut this line, but nothing came out of here. I thought for sure it had fluid in here, but I guess not. You know, it's rather insignificant, but at the same time, it was almost keeping me up at night trying to figure out what happened to the power steering fluid that was in this system. Up until this point, if you remember, this truck was running and driving, and I could not figure out what happened to it. Until I started to edit this video, and I realized that 6 months ago, Dustin stopped by to help me remove the axles from this truck, and we removed the lines that ran from the power steering reservoir to this power steering assist ram. So over the last 6 months or so, that fluid has just kind of trickled out onto the deck of the trailer, and that's why that reservoir was basically empty. So at least there's not some kind of mysterious power steering fluid situation with this whole system. I know where the fluid went now. The power steering lines are taken care of. Now I need to get in here and get all of this grease cleared out from around the bell housing, because there's a transmission mount bolt down here that I need to get to. And of course, after about 5 trips up to the garage, bottom side, the bolt head is a 13/16, and up top we got a 7/8. Alright, so here's the bolt on the driver's side of the bell housing. Let's go over to the passenger side. Alright, there's the one for the passenger side of the bell housing. Now both of those are out of the way. Both of the transmission mount bolts have been removed. Now it's time to move onto the front of the engine. Let me try to snake this camera down here. There's the bolt for the passenger side front motor mount. There's one on the other side. It'll be almost impossible to get those on camera since they're such tight quarters. But I'll remove those, and then we'll get in here and either remove the radiator or remove the carburetor so we can hook that engine lift plate up there. My neighbor's mowing in the background, so sorry about the audio. I'm sure it's going to ruin it, but I took a step back, reevaluated the situation, and instead of even fooling with the bolt's top side, I got down here with a bottle jack. I lifted up the front of the frame. I slid this 6x6 forward that was underneath the engine cross member originally. Now it's sitting underneath the radiator cross member, and that revealed one single bolt underneath. So I took the nut and rubber mount off of there. Took about 15 minutes or so. It was pretty easy. Saved me all that time of trying to fool with the engine mount on the top side. The crank pulley was over those bolts, which would have made it impossible to get a ratchet and socket up there, so I saved myself quite a bit of time. I got in here and I cut this cross member out of the way so I can lift the radiator up and drain the coolant out of here. Tell me if this is a Ford thing or what, but I finally found the drain. It's on the front side of the radiator. Any of these old trucks that I've ever messed with, you'll find the drain somewhere underneath on the back side. But there's the drain right in the front. And I don't think in a million years I'm going to turn that, because it looks like it's either going to snap off or it's going to just bend these ears. So I think my best bet is to lift the radiator up, take the lower radiator hose off of it, and drain the coolant that way. I got to take the shroud off of the radiator to be able to lift the radiator up high enough to drain the fluid out of it. It's pretty close to the fan, so if I get that out of the way, I should have more than enough room to get in here and drain the coolant. I'm losing daylight pretty fast. But I've got the radiator blocked up high enough that I think I can go ahead and pop that lower radiator hose off of there and drain the coolant out through the front. I might have to make some kind of a chute of some kind. Put a bucket right there, and I'll hopefully catch all that good coolant. I guess we'll go ahead and get the engine lift plate installed. Take the carburetor off of here. Disconnect the fuel supply line. Alright, this should just pop off of here right now. Guess it would help if I took all the springs loose. Might as well take the spacer off here while I'm at it, because I want that engine lift plate to fit on there nice and snug. First off, I guess let's see if this even fits. I about ruined it pulling the engine out of that International wrecker. Oh, it fits on there just fine. I'll have to find quite a few washers to space this stud length up, make it shorter. The sun's starting to come out, so it's getting hot out here, but I got the engine lift plate on there, quite a few washers to space it out. I really don't like the look of how small those studs are to hold this entire engine and transmission assembly up, so I'll probably have to run a chain around here just to be safe in case that pops off of there. But that should be taken care of. And for the radiator, don't laugh at me now. Got a piece of cardboard in between the radiator and the fan. I wiped down this piece of angle iron. I got it running right down here to some clamps that are holding it up off the ground. And I got a nice clean bucket to hopefully catch all of that coolant. There's also 2 pans down here in case I underestimated how much is in here. 5-gallon bucket. I wouldn't think there'd be more than 5 gallons of coolant in this radiator, but I could be horribly wrong. Hopefully the little aqueduct idea works out pretty good, but I'll set the camera up and we'll see how this goes. Worked out pretty good if I do say so myself. Not quite 5 gallons in here. I'm gonna let this drain for a little bit. Now, like I mentioned, I did wipe down this piece of angle iron the best I could. And anytime I use coolant like this in my little brush hog or something like that, I'll run it through a strainer. So I shouldn't have any issues there. Now, after this drains for a little bit, I'll get in here, undo the top radiator hose, and we'll get this radiator completely out of the way. My brother's mowing the lawn. Luckily, he helps me out whenever I'm out here working on this kind of stuff and can't do two different things at the same time. And also a big shout out to my dad. He completely bailed me out the other day, came over here and fixed the power steering on the backhoe. So now I've got the bucket somewhat centered over the engine. I'm going to run a chain up from the engine plate to the bucket and run a chain around the bell housing of the transmission up to the other side. And like I mentioned, since this engine is pretty much already sold, I might get in here too and run a safety chain around this bracket in case the threads pull out of that intake. They shouldn't, but you just never know. It's different when I'm putting an engine in dry storage, I guess you could say, but since this one's spoken for already, I need to really be a little bit more delicate. So let's get about 50 chains out of the garage and we'll get this all secured to the bucket. Just as I figured, it took me a little bit to find some chains, but I've got one rigging sling hooked up. I've got one of the chains ran down to the alternator bracket just in case. This one over here to the power steering pump bracket. The other two run down to the U-joints at the end of the transmission. Again, this is just in case something happens and it falls. But I've got a really nice chain wrapped around the bell housing. Comes up here to the top of the bucket, goes over the hook, comes right back down to a shackle that runs through that engine mount plate. So let me set the camera up. We'll go very gently and hopefully this all goes right. Wait a minute. That's not my typical HPDG logo. That is. Oh, I think I remember. Let's go in the garage where it's nice and cool for a minute and we'll talk about these. That short video clip that you just watched was my buddy Andy over at FlatThunder cutting these HPDG logos out on his plasma table. Andy, I greatly appreciate that. That's going to help me out quite a bit. You can see that there's 6 of them that he sent me. I believe they're cut out of 16 gauge steel. They will eventually get hand painted by me to look like the original HPDG logo for the channel, and then there'll be a scavenger hunt in a future video in which they get given away. Andy is a fantastic guy. He's got an awesome channel here on this platform, and we've been friends for about 6 years or so. Just like every other gearhead like myself and countless others that are watching this video right now, if you work on stuff, chances are you've got a variety of projects, and that's the case with Andy. He's got an older Ford cab-over truck with a crane on it. He's got a 1980s four-wheel drive Ford pickup truck that was used as a plow rig for quite a few years. Got pretty rusty, so he tracked down a rust-free cab and done a swap on that. He's also building his own international dump truck. Andy was nice enough to send these to me, so I think the least I can do is try to send some traffic his way. He's got a great channel. I'll leave it linked in the video description below. Go ahead and check him out. If you like what you see, which I believe you will, go ahead and subscribe to him. Just please do me the favor, drop down in his comment section and just tell him that Zane sent you. But anyways, let's get back to the video. Thanks again, Andy. I really appreciate it. So we finally have the engine and transmission out of this chassis. If you look over here, the safety chains have slack in them. This chain that runs down to the engine lift plate has a good amount of pressure on it. So does the one around the bell housing. But then again, the ones here at the back have nothing. Just put them on as a precaution. Now that the engine and transmission are out of the chassis, this video is not over yet, folks. I still got to remove the leaf spring hangers, mounts for the brake lines, this mount back here for that power assisting ram that I was talking about earlier, the front spring hanger, shock mounts, steering box with all of the lines that run down there like I mentioned underneath that cross member. Probably get in here too. These cab mounts are bolted on the side. They're riveted up top, but I'll grind these rivets down. We'll save the cab mounts because they're not all rusted out. And then this chunk of frame is pretty much ready for the scrap pile. And of course, we wouldn't be dealing with an engine in the shop unless it's leaking antifreeze all over the concrete, so that's always nice. That might just work. It set a record for the highest temperature in Missouri this time of year in quite a few decades. This tree here is nice and healthy. I love the shade. I'm sure in my lifetime I'll see it actually fall and crush the roof in on one of my old trucks, but I'm glad to have all of this shade here where I can start cutting off these cab mounts and spring hangers. I got the grinder out, and something that I wanted to do to save me a little bit of hassle maybe in the future is I took my transfer set. You can see DS for driver's side. Got the spring hanger as well. Right up here for where the brake hose attaches to the frame. The shock mount, and also the front leaf spring hanger. That one's not as good, but I understand that it's taken me almost 5 years to get to this point. These all look the same. The driver's side might be the exact same as the passenger side, but if they're off just a little bit, I don't want to confuse myself when all this goes back together. So that will hopefully save me a little bit of troubleshooting in the future. I'm lucky in some spots because these hangers are bolted up front. So I want to get in here with the wire brush, clean the threads up the best I can. And about a year ago I was sent a free care package from the fine folks over at Croyle. So I want to grab this stuff, spray everything down as best I can. And hopefully that will save me a little bit of headache in tearing all this stuff apart. Well, after about an hour of cutting the heads off of those rivets and punching them out with brute force, there's all the brackets I need. These were the rear leaf spring hangers. I also took that cross member out that's got the hoop for the PTO drive shaft. Pretty much the only thing left on this is the bump stops, if I even choose to take them off of there. That one's dry rotted really bad. And then this section of frame is headed to the scrap pile. Bunch of little babies. It's been about 3 months since I took that all apart, and honestly this is about the last place that I wanted to put this cab. You can see it sitting down here under this gigantic tree that one day will fall over and crush it. But I've got it sitting up off the ground on some plastic pallets. I've got quite a few other trucks up here in the lineup that I haven't showed yet, but we'll get around to that another day. But anyways, the cab is safe and sound at the moment right down here, just temporarily. The original plan was to actually get in here with the backhoe and pull this truck out from alongside the garage and sit that cab on the back part of the frame, since this truck has just bare frame rails, no bed or anything like that. I don't like using weed killer around my property, and as you can see, I get a little bit of rain and this stuff grows up like crazy. But if you go to one of my videos that's filmed in the winter time, there's nothing there. So right whenever the winter comes around and all these plants are dead, I'll pull this truck out of the way. I've got a wood planer back there that's made onto a trailer that was my dad's. I got to get that out of the way, put some gravel down here, and I can put that cab on the back of this truck. Over here under the shade tree, I have the lines and the steering box off the frame of that truck. I got rid of the trailer finally out of the way and that chunk of frame. Luckily, I will have a video out very soon on getting this big forklift up and running. It's been very handy. It's been about 3 months or so since I filmed the original first part of this video. There will also be another video on tearing this truck completely apart. Dustin and I are going to pull the body off of this, and it will eventually get swapped onto my 6x6 chassis. But in central Missouri, where I'm from, this is just kind of weird to see one of these. And it's a power wagon. I mean, it's not a deuce and a half. It's the size of a pickup. It's starting to sleet a lot more, so I'll probably take this video into the garage and tell you the backstory of how I bought it and what my plans are for it. Now, I know what you're thinking already. You might be wondering, Zane, please, you want to grab through the screen and shake me and say, you've already got 1,000,000 projects. Why would you get another one? Well, the main reason that I bought another project like this is simply for the fact that
I'm practically insane.
Alright, okay, I'm only joking around. You might remember this truck from doing a walkthrough on a salvage yard quite a while back, but that will be included in this video as well. Anyways, on the side of this truck, I got all the brackets that I took off the frame. International 1210. How do you like that? The cab off of an old Mack truck. This fender's been heavily customized. Here on this custom-made flat fender, I've got all of these spring hangers and shock mounts and everything like that that will eventually get transferred over to the original rollback that all this stuff is going to go underneath. I took the engine and transmission out of the truck and had them sitting in the shop for a while. Now, I know I've had this truck for quite some time. I planned on doing a few other videos with it, but something happened to the transfer case and the truck just pretty much had to sit until it was time to pull it apart. But I still kept in contact with the fellow that was interested in that engine, and every 6 months or so I'd still get a hold of him and ask him if he was interested. I removed the engine and transmission from the truck, and guess what happened? Come here a little bit closer. Can you guess what happened? He told me he didn't want it anymore. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit aggravating, but there was a lot of family stuff that happened that I don't talk about on camera because it's not truck related. But family stuff that happened with me and prevented me from making videos for about 1.5 years. They were very spotty. Hopefully now that I've got the property cleaned up a little bit better with all this gravel and stuff here and the big forklift running, I can start churning videos out a little bit easier. But hopefully the guy that was interested in the engine is doing all right. I didn't really get much of a response from him, so I really do hope that things are going well for him. I posted that engine on Facebook Marketplace, and in about 2 weeks' time, I had somebody drive here to central Missouri, where I'm located, from central Kansas, to buy that engine to put in a dump truck, so at least it went to a good home. I almost forgot one important thing to talk about at the end of this video, but anyways, the front end, you can see the bare leaf springs. The hangers that we took off the frame went to the front end. Now on this side, you've got the rear end that still has the spring hangers riveted to the frame. So I'll have to cut those off and remove these rivets, but I'll do that off camera. You all have seen me quite a few times knock rivets out of a frame. It's not something too special. But anyways, it's taken about 5 years or so to get to this point, which is pretty amazing. I don't put videos out every week like I can. I have a pretty demanding job, and I do videos whenever I can. But you gotta think, we didn't just tear apart the yellow truck. We also tore apart that other rollback quite a few years ago in the middle of winter. Not only that, but I also drove 5.5 hours from central Missouri to about central Iowa with my brother about 2 years ago to get the cab off of that old vintage semi truck. There's one piece of the puzzle. So there's actually been quite a bit of work that's gone into this build so far, but all these videos right now are going to be put in a folder for Teardown, which means the next video series that you will see on Project Atlas will be the first video where we start to put things back together, and that's very exciting. But anyways, thanks a lot for watching this video, and as always, it doesn't matter if you're working on your project in a garage or outside in the gravel in your driveway. What matters is that you go out there, you do the job yourself, and you learn more about your project, whatever that project may be. Now that this video's over, how about you go outside and work on something? Anyways, my name is Zane, and I hope to catch you next time.